We do have a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order at actually 6:31 now. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I will read the script for remotely conducted open meetings. As a preliminary matter, this is Audie LeBrie, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Barbara Anderson?
Aye.
Rick Ward?
Aye.
Amy Salter?
Aye.
Mike Barbaro, are you here? Under another name, perhaps? Oh, I think he is just coming in.
Hello.
Thank you, Mike. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Manager Keith Hickey.
Aye.
Executive Assistant Linda Daigle.
Aye.
Administrative Assistant Taylor Tower.
She's present.
Okay. Anticipated speakers, if you wish to speak to an item, you will be recognized at that time. Introduction to remote meeting. Good evening. This open meeting of the Board of Selectmen is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's recent executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all members in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Board of Selectmen is convening by video conference via Zoom meeting, ID number 939-433-184, posted on the town's website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and that take care not to screen share your computer. Your broadcast may be picked up and captured by the recording. Supporting materials have been provided. Members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Some ground rules. We'll be turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker as they wish to speak on an agenda item. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking, and please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For items with public comments, after members have spoken, will afford public comment as follows. If a member of the public wishes to speak on an issue, you need to identify yourself with your names and address, and you will be called on individually. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. All right. Other than the town of Winterton, is anyone audio or video recording this evening? Please indicate if you are audio or video recording. And I see in here none, okay. As this is our first meeting after the beginning of the new fiscal year, July 1st, before we get into the agenda items, the item on our order of business is to reorganization of the Board of Selectmen. There are two positions that are reorganized annually, the chairman position and then the vice chair position. I pulled out my Robert's rules just to review. As current chair, I will open the nominations. A person can nominate himself or herself. A nomination does not need a second. A member can be nominated for more than one office. And it will be by, it states that you don't have to get recognition, but because of the constraints doing the remote meeting, I do ask if you have a nomination that you would like to put forward, you do indicate so and wait till you're recognized.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Ward.
I nominate Mike Barbaro for chair.
Thank you. We have a nomination of Mike Barbaro for the chair position. Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? Yes, Mrs.
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Mrs. Anderson for chair.
Thank you. Mrs. Anderson has been nominated for chair. Any further nominations for the position of chair?
Having trouble with the website.
Okay. We have two nominees, Barbara Anderson and Mike Barbaro. I'll go by order that they were nominated. Roll call vote for Mike Barbaro. If you would like Mike Barbaro as chair, and I will do a roll call vote. Mrs. Anderson?
No.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mrs. Salter?
No.
Mr. Barbaro?
Yes.
And the chair will vote aye. Nick Anderson is our next nominee. Roll call vote. Mrs. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Ward?
Yes.
Mrs. Salter?
Yes.
Mr. Barbaro?
No.
And the chair will vote no. So we have a tie. We have 3 for Mrs. Anderson and for Mr. Barbaro.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I guess I didn't understand you because I thought we voted the first time.
I apologize.
Okay, my vote is for Mr. Barbaro.
Mr. Barbaro, okay, thank you. So it is 3-2 for Mr. Barbaro for chair. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson, for stepping forward for that. I will open the nominations for the vice chair position.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Barbaro.
I nominate Rick Ward for vice chair.
All right, we have one nomination at the moment for vice chair. Are there any other nominations for the vice chair position, please? All right, seeing, hearing none. Take a roll call vote for Rick Ward as for the vice chair position. Where are my pictures? Mrs. Anderson,
Aye.
Mr. Ward,
Aye.
Mrs. Salter,
No.
Mr. Barbaro,
Aye.
and the chair will vote aye. So, Mr. Chair, I will turn the meeting over now to Chairman Barbaro.
Thank you. We'll now start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Did I miss that?
Yeah, we're on item number 1.
Okay, thank you. Selectmen, comments and announcements. We'll start with Mrs. Anderson.
I don't have any at this time.
Thank you. Mrs. Salter,
None at this time.
Ms. LeBrie,
None at this time, thank you.
Mr. Ward,
I just want to thank Audrey for being the chair. I found her leadership very inspiring. I liked having her as chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
I myself like to thank Audrey. She's been a great chair for the last couple of years, and I appreciate her steady hand through these times. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Do we have any public comments at this time?
Mr. Chair, it's Mo Ward.
Go ahead.
I have 2 things. I just want to give kudos to our Winchendon Police Department. On July 4th, they were just battered with calls, a drowning, a motor vehicle rollover, a dirt bike crash, erratic drivers, and numerous firework calls, just too numerous to mention. And they steadfastly did their job and did it with dignity and with grace, and I just applaud them for what they did that night. It was a dreadful night for them. The other thing is, I want to talk a little bit about the upcoming primary. Anyone who is listening can find that information on the town website. We will have early voting. It starts on Saturday, August the 22nd. If you are a registered voter, you will receive an application to vote by mail from the state. Other information, if you go on that website, check it out. You can find just about anything you need. If you have any questions, Wendy Stevens, the town clerk, is available to answer those. We are in need of poll workers. Anyone who is interested, if they could email me at mward@townofwinchendon, all one word, no spaces.com. mward@townofwinchendon.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First up this evening, we have a poll petition from National Grid.
Mr. Chairman,
Madam, Ms. LeBrie.
in conformity with the requirements of Section 22 of Chapter 166 of the General Laws, Tier Ed, you are hereby notified that a public hearing is scheduled to be held by the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Winchendon, Massachusetts on the 13th day of July at 6:35 p.m. upon the petition of Massachusetts Electrical Company, DBA National Grid, and Verizon New England, Inc., requesting permission it desires to locate poles, wires, and fixtures, including the necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way. Gardner Road. National Grid to install 1 joint-owned pole on Gardner Road, beginning at a point approximately 3,250 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Spring Street and continuing approximately 30 feet in a west direction. Location approximately is shown on plan attached. Wherefore, it prays that after due notice and hearing as provided by law, it be granted a location for and permission to erect and maintain poles and wires together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as it may find necessary. Said poles to be erected substantially in accordance with the plan filed herewith marked Gardner Road, Winchendon, Massachusetts, plan number 29661819, dated June 8, 2020, and attached herewith. Also, for permission to lay and maintain underground laterals, cables, and wires in the above or intersecting public ways for the purpose of making connections with such poles and buildings as each of said petitioners may desire for distributing purposes. The petitioner agrees to reserve space for 1 cross arm at a suitable point on each of said poles for the fire, police, telephone, and telegraph signal wires, belonging to the municipality and used by it exclusively for municipal purposes. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting will be held remotely via Zoom. A link to join the meeting can be found on the town's website, www.townofwinchendon.com. Go to the calendar tab and click on the meeting date and review the posted agenda 13 for instructions on how to join in the meeting. Alternatively, any comments, questions, or concerns can be forwarded to the Board of Selectmen prior to the meeting by mailing the Selectmen at 109 Front Street, Department 1, Winchendon, Mass. 01475, by email at ttower@townofwinchendon.com, or by calling the office at 978-297-0085. Taylor Tower, Administrative Assistant for the Winchendon Board of Selectmen. So I move that we open the public hearing.
Can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
The roll call vote. Ms. LeBrie?
Aye.
Ms. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Salter? Mr. Ward?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The hearing is now open. Is there anyone here from National Grid?
Hi, Mark Tapley here from National Grid. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Please lay out your...
Not too bad. So this is for a new customer of ours. There's currently no electricity to that location. We will be extending our primary down the lines that come down Gardner Road, and we need to hop across the road and place a riser to bring the primary underground into their property. And this will feed 3 transformers down the roadway over there that they're creating.
Very well. Any questions from the board? Ms. LeBrie?
Just looking through things, it looks like the butters were notified. DPW has no question with that. So I have no specific question. Just wanted to notate that everything looks in order.
Thank you. Do we have anyone speaking against this petition? Not seeing any. I will ask that a motion be made to close the hearing.
So moved.
May I get a second, please?
Second.
This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Salter?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The hearing is now closed. Can I get a motion on the...
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward?
I move to approve the poll petition for one joint-owned poll on Gardner Road as presented this evening, and authorize the town manager to execute the order on behalf of the select board.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. And that will be a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Next up, we have a Register of Voters appointment. Judy LaJoy. Are you here?
Mr. Chair, it's Keith Hickey.
Town Manager.
Thank you. Judy LaJoy was unable to be here this evening. She had a conflict and couldn't be here, but thanks to the board for their consideration this evening.
Thank you. Can I get a motion on this, please?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. LeBrie?
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the appointment of Judy LaJoy to the Board of Registrars with a term ending March 31st, 2023, and to authorize the town manager to sign the appointment slip.
Thank you. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Mr. Ward, thank you. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Passes 5-0.
And thank you to Judy for stepping forward.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
We have a planning board alternative member, Mr. Greg Waite. Is he here this evening?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. LeBrie?
I did see a note from the town manager later in the afternoon. He was unable to be here tonight due to a conflict. I do notice that, the letter of intent, Mr. Hickey, planning board, behind this, or thoughts from the planning board on this? Or is
Yes,
it-
they're supportive of this.
They are. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Can I get a motion on this, please?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. LeBrie?
I move to approve the appointment of Garrett Went as an alternate member of the planning board with the term to expire June 30th, 2021, and to authorize the town manager to sign the appointment slip.
May I get a second on this, please?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you, and we appreciate you stepping forward.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mrs. LeBrie?
Keith, am I correct in this was a gentleman that was not going to be here tonight? Because I see that the next one up is the same last name. Did I get it confused?
You did.
I apologize.
That's okay. Ken Want, from the conservation has a conflict this evening and can't be here.
Is Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mrs. LeBrie?
Is Garrett here this evening? No, I apologize for that mistake.
Not a problem. Can I get a motion on this Conservation Commission appointment, Mr. Ken Want?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward?
I move to approve the appointment of Ken Wand to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term to expire on June 30th, 2023, and to authorize the town manager to sign the appointment slip.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. LeBrie. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. And we appreciate Mr. White stepping up.
Yes.
Now, we have some vacancies. Let me just pull that up because my computer's acting funny. Let me see. Come on. Okay, here we go. All right, as of July 13, 2020, the Board of Selectmen acknowledges the following vacancies. If you're interested in serving on one of these boards, please submit a letter of interest to the Board of Selectmen, 109 Front Street, Department 1, Winchendon, Mass. 01475. Forms can also be found at www.townofwinchendon.com. Board Selectmen. Follow the link to the online applications for boards and committees. Communication Committee, 3 vacancies. The Board of Selectmen established a Communication Committee consisting of 7 appointed members. The charge of the committee is to assist in expanding the local access programming and the communication with the residents of the community. Council of Aging, one vacancy. The Council of Aging provides information and referrals as well as support, counseling regarding aging issues, health insurance counseling, and income tax preparation, and provided by volunteers. Education, recreation, and exercise programs are offered, and also our transportation services, medical equipment loans, blood pressure and podiatry checks, Meals on Wheels, and volunteer opportunities. Cultural Council, LCC. The program is the largest grassroots cultural funding network in the nation, supporting thousands of community-based projects in the arts, humanities, and sciences annually. The program promotes the availability of rich cultural experiences for every Massachusetts citizen. Yearly, the council awards grants to cultural programs townwide. These include school field trips, after-school programs, concerts, festivals, lectures, theater, dance, music, and film. The LCC projects takes place in school community centers, libraries, elderly care facilities, town hall, parks, and wherever community comes together. The council currently has 4 members and can consist up to 19 members. Members can only serve 2 3-year terms in a row and can be reappointed after 1 year. Fence View Field Driver, 1 vacancy. There are 2 positions appointed by the Board of Selectmen for a 1-year term that either share the following duties or can be split by the fence viewer in the second position of the field driver. The field driver, covered under the Animal Control Bylaw 17.1, responds to and investigates complaints violating the following. No person shall pasture any cattle, goat, or any animal upon any public way in said town, either without a keeper, except without the limits of such way adjoining his premises. And a field driver is instructed to enforce this bylaw. Fence viewer administers fence laws by inspecting new fences and settlements of dispute arising from trespasses by livestock that have escaped an enclosure. Also, a view fencer is to see that they're in good repair, and in case there is a dispute between neighbors, work to resolve their differences. Problem as such, size, condition, and distance from property lines, and complaints that still arise between neighbors. Library trustee, 1 vacancy. The board has full authority over the governance of the library. The board hires the library director, sets the policy for the governance of the library and the provisions of service. With input from the director, the trustees develop an annual budget, which is the primary policy document. Trustees work closely with library administration in planning and goal setting for the library. This might include development or expansion or collection and/or services. 1 space preservation appraiser and/or survey revolving fund advisory committee, 1 vacancy. The duty of the committee are to make recommendations to the selectmen on applications for interest-free loans for $10,000 fund to assist landowners who want to preserve land as protected open spaces. The committee is comprised of 2 seats appointed by the Board of Selectmen, 1 seat by the Agricultural Commission, 1 seat by the Planning Board, and 1 seat by the Conservation Commission. Russ Gillen fills one of these 2 seats. Recreation Commission, 1 regular member vacancy, 2 student vacancies. There shall be a Recreation Commission consisting of 7 members appointed by the Board of Selectmen. 1 member shall be in good standing from Murdoch Middle School, and 1 member student should be good standing from Murdoch High School. The term shall be for 3 years, and so arranged that the terms of as nearly or equal member as possible shall expire each year. Upon completion of these original terms, each member shall serve 3 terms. Student members shall be appointed annually. The commission acts in an advisory capacity in the matter pertaining to public relations, recreation, making annual budget recommendations, and assisting in planning recreation programs to stimulate the public interest. The stated primary function of the commission is to explain and enhance the recreation opportunities for the registered residents of Winchendon. Toy Town Community Partnership, 2 vacancy. The partnership responsibility includes innovating and developing projects and enhancing the quality of life and the economic vitality of Winchendon by providing citizen support to Town Hall. The committee consists of 9 regular members and 2 alternate members. Winchendon Community Park Committee, formerly the Ingleside Utilization Committee, 5 vacancies. The Board of Selectmen established the committee as a result of acquisition of the Ingleside property off Maple Street. The board is seeking interested people to serve on the committee and to assist in development of plan of the property. The committee is comprised of up to 15 members, but is currently being reviewed for restructure in 2 separate committees. Board of Appeals, 1 regular vacancy, 2 alternative vacancies. Board holds public hearings on application in the form of administration appeal for a person aggrieved because they were not able to obtain a building permit or enforcement actions from the building inspector related to interpretation of the Winchendon zoning bylaws. Public hearings are also held on applications for special permits as provided for in the zoning bylaws, as well as requests for variances for certain clear specific provisions of the bylaw. Hearings are held at a regularly scheduled board meeting on the first and third Wednesday evening of every month. The board consists of 5 members and 3 alternatives. Wow, that was a lot. Thank you. We'll move on to the agenda. So, thank you. Okay. Permits, license, and applications. Tonight you received in your Dropbox an application from a mobile vendor, Capone Grillin' Kim Capone. Mrs. Capone responded to a published by the Redevelopment Authority to locate a mobile food truck in the parking lot corner of Glen Allen Road and Spring Street. After interviewing Mrs. Capone, the Redevelopment Authority voted to approve allowing Mrs. Capone to locate a food truck on the redevelopment property pending approval of a mobile vendor permit by the Board of Selectmen. Mrs. Capone will participate through the Zoom and is excited to let you know her plans. She's having her food truck built currently. Once it's finished, the fire, building, and health departments will all need to conduct their inspections prior to the permit being issued. The $50 permit fee will be collected. Hello, Ms. Capone, how are you? You're muted. You're muted. You have your mute button on.
I don't think she's muted, but she's not coming through for some reason, Mr. Chair.
She's not coming through at all. You're not coming through at all. No, she's not. It's not coming through. I can help you out for a minute. She came to the Redevelopment Authority. She's having a food truck built specifically for the purpose to obviously open her own business. She's going to work at there a couple of days a week, and I'm not hearing you at all. And she had a very exciting menu. I just can't remember it off the top of my forehead. And I know she also talked about ice cream. I got that right. Did everyone get a chance to review the documents?
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, the only questions I have, I was just curious when she intended to open. I know the hours are here. And also, the fire captain that she talked about a hood system and a suppression system for the trailer, and I was wondering if she heard that or is going to take care of that.
She's acknowledging yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. If I remember correctly, it was Friday and Saturday from...
And Sunday.
And Sunday, yeah, because I asked her to do the Sunday from like 4 to 8 p.m. or something like that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, correct me, Kim, from 10 a.m. until 8 or 9? Okay, p.m.
I think so.
Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Correct. Would we have any more questions for her as we try to interpret this? Not seeing any. I look for a motion on this.
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. LeBray.
I would move to approve the issuance of a mobile vendor permit to Capone's Grillin' for a mobile food truck to be located in the parking lot of Grout Park, pending final inspection of the fire, building, and health department. And I'll authorize the town manager to sign the permit on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
May I get a second on this?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson has stepped away. Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. That will be 4-0 because Mrs. Anderson has stepped away. You're all set, Mrs. Capone. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, good,
LeBrie.
yeah, best of luck.
All right, next on the agenda, we have a new business. Request for abatement on Water Street, water and sewer charges for 42 Spruce Street. Is Mrs. Jin Lin here?
I'm here, but I cannot see.
Okay, we can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. If you read through the document, she had some unoccupied property since October 2019. Her nephew was checking the house on January 12th and discovered a severe water leak in the laundry room. The water was turned off on the 12th and the leak was repaired on the 13th. The work was completed by a relative rather than a licensed plumber as required by the abatement policy. After the town manager spoke to Mrs. Lynn, she did ask a licensed plumber to certify the work. The plumber looked at the repairs, but according to Mrs. Lynn, was unwillingly to certify repair because he did not see the damaged plumbing. The town manager and the public works director have no reason to doubt Mrs. Lynn. However, due to the property owners not following the abatement criteria, the staff recommends not granting the abatement. If the board would like to provide some relief, the sewer abatement is $449.39, which has been calculated based on prior billing. Mr. Gallant, would you like to speak to this?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So I'm the one who figured out how much the sewer abatement would be. Even though she didn't have a plumber repair it, I think she's being truthful. I also think that the water did not go down the sewer. That's why I came up with $100 on the prior bill and $349.34 on the bill where nobody lived in the house. It's up to the board to decide. Our policy states you have to have a plumber fix it and verify it. So that would be totally up to you.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Lynn, would you like to speak on this?
Me?
Yes.
I actually, because at the time I was not home, so my relatives visit, and later on I did ask the plumber to come to see, but he said because he was not the one to fix it, so he was not able to, to give any statement. So that's all I can do now since it's already fixed. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mrs. LeBrie.
Yes, thank you. Question for Mr. Gallant, I think, Al. You stated that the water did not go down the sewer. Can you describe, where was the water in relation to, where was the leak? Did it go out the back? Is there any way to
I think it just
confirm
flooded
that it did not go down to the sewer?
It just flooded our cellar.
Okay. And where did the water go? How did they get it out of the cellar?
Just seeped through the floor and the walls.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure there was quite the mess there when it first happened.
I've had flooded cellars before, yes, I'm sure. No drain in the cellar that it would have gone into a sewer pipe or anything. Okay.
And that the water department indicated.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions from the board on this matter? Not seeing any, look for a motion on this.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. LeBrie.
I move that the board approve the sewer abatement application for 42 Spruce Street as presented this evening.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Labrie?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mr. Salter?
No.
Mrs. Anderson, are you there? She's not here. And the chair votes aye. So the abatement is approved.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
The next one we have up is an abatement for 275, 281 Lincoln Street. The tax collector is seeking abatement to sewer betterment on town property at 275 Lincoln Ave, the Deal property. The abatement is for the FY20 amount due. The lien would remain on the property, be transferred to a new owner if the property's ever sold. Mr. Gallant.
Mr. Chair,
Hickey,
Hickey, maybe I can take that for him.
please go ahead.
Thank you. Again, as you mentioned earlier, this is a town-owned piece of property. We're looking to abate just fiscal 20's betterment assessment in the hopes that at some point in the not-too-distant future, we'll be able to sell this property, and the sewer betterment assessment would go with the property and be the responsibility of the new owner. The amount of the abatement we're seeking tonight is $126.41. And that would just clean up the tax collector's books because there is no reason to collect a betterment on town-owned property.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions? Not seeing any. I'm looking for a motion on this, please.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the fiscal year 20 sewer betterment abatement as presented this evening.
may I get a second on this?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Labrie. This is a roll call vote. Mrs. Labrie?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Thank you. Next up, we have a request to accept the layout on Central Street. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of the project to reconstruct Central Street, one of the checklist items that the Mass DOT requires is an accepted layout of a road they're going to be working on. In this case, what we've been able to determine is a portion of Central Street was never accepted by the town of Winchendon for some reason. Al Gallant and the town clerk have worked with our engineering firm, Ty and Bond, to review the information that we do have, and it appears as though only portions of Central Street had not been accepted. There's also small portions of Summer and Railroad Street that abut Central Street that were also not accepted. So this process this evening in your Dropbox materials is a layout that coincides with the existing layout of Central Street as it sits today. What we're asking the Board of Selectmen to consider is bringing this, accepting this layout, if you're willing to do so, and moving it to the planning board for their review and their consideration. If they also approved it, it will go back to the Board of Selectmen. We're looking at tentatively on August 10th to have the vote, a final vote by the Board of Selectmen to put a warrant article on the warrant for the annual town meeting to ask the residents of the community to vote to accept the layout of Central Street. Al's here. He's been a part of this process as well. If you have any questions at all, I'm sure either he or I can attempt to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I'll now open it up to the board for any questions. Mrs. LeBrey?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm looking at the plans. Can you tell me which part of Central Street specifically we're talking about that was not accepted?
So what we're looking to do, Audrey, is to have the Board of Selectmen, the Planning Board, and ultimately the town just vote to accept Central Street as a whole. So it's very clean. There aren't portions accepted at one point and then portions accepted at other times in the past, just to allow for a very clean process to allow in the future people doing their review to be able to determine that this roadway was potentially approved in 2020 completely.
And if I may, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mrs. LeBrey.
you mentioned part of Railroad Street, and then Summer Street. Is it the intent for you to have us do the same with those two streets, accept them in their entirety? Or is it
In that situation, Al can correct me if I'm wrong, I think all we're looking for the board to do is just look to bring forward just a small portion of Central Street
okay?
for consideration.
All right, just right about Central, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this matter? Not seeing any. Mr. Town Manager, where we are doing Railroad Ave, will this hold this year to reconstruct under the CDBG grant? Will this hold up that process?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing any questions. I'm looking for a motion on this, please.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the Central Street layout presented this evening and forward the layout to the Planning Board for their consideration.
May I get a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. LeBrey, thank you. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrey?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a request to allow homeowner to refinance home purchase through the CDBG Affordable Housing Program. Winchendon homeowner bought this house through an affordable housing program funded by DHCD and administrated by the Greater Gardner CDC. Terms of the mortgage include a deed rider that includes the following. The property shall not be leased, refinanced, encumbered, or voluntary or otherwise, or mortgaged without prior written consent from the undersecretary of the municipality. The homeowner requests permission to refinance the property for a more favorable interest rate, half the existing rate. The DHCD has approved their request. Copy of the letter is in your Dropbox material. The homeowner is asking for the board to approve the request to authorize the town manager to sign any necessary documents. Is the homeowner here this evening? Not seeing any. Mr. Town Manager, would you like to speak on this?
Sure. I think the explanation you just gave, Mr. Chair, really summarizes what they're looking to try to do. The town has to approve the refinancing. They've gone through all the steps up until receiving town approval. The letter from DHCD is in your Dropbox. They're required to get town approval as part of this program to refinance their property. The town staff feel there's no reason not to provide authorization to allow them to refinance, so staff is recommending that the board approve the request to refinance the property at 392B Maple Street.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any other questions on this matter? Not seeing any. Mrs. LeBrey.
Mr. Chair, I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the request for the homeowners of 392B Maple Street to refinance the home as required by the CDBG Affordable Housing Program and authorize the town manager to sign any documentation on behalf of the board.
May I get a second on that?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Labrie?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. And you'll sign for that, Mr. Hickey, and let the homeowner know that we're moving forward with that?
Yes, sir, we'll contact them tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much. Next up, 7.5, request for a Winchendon Community Park Committee to restructure committee. Included in your Dropbox is a request by the Community Park Committee to restructure. The purpose is to recommend and to seek approval for restructure in the WCPC from one committee into two subcommittees in the Infrastructure Committee and the Community Program Usage Committee. This recommendation as a result proposed for each committee has been approved by the entire WCPC. Members of this committee include Ms. Jane Lapointe and Ms. Dave Romanowski, and they are here this evening. They can go into more detail about this. Which one you would like to speak first? Mr. Romanowski.
Hi, I'm Dave Romanowski, High Street, Winchendon, member of the Winchendon Community Park Committee, here representing the committee tonight along with Jane Lapointe. Basically, we've been in existence for a couple of years. We've made, we believe, quite a few improvements to the park, and there's quite a few more to go. What we'd really like to do is, over the past couple of years, we've found that there are basically two functions of the committee. One is to maintain the park, develop it, and work with the town on that development. And the other is possible activities going on at the park. And what we would like to do is separate those two groups into separate committees to become more nimble at both. We find that with a larger committee, getting things done, getting quorums together, meeting more than once a month is a little bit difficult to do at times. So what we'd like to do is, based on persons in the committee's interests, divide those two groups, formulate two new committees.
Thank you. Mrs. Lapointe, do you have anything to say? Nope. I open it up to the board for any questions.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yeah, I just want to point out that I saw a reference to a subcommittees. These are two distinct committees now, not to be formed as subcommittees. Also, the question I have, I see you've divided the people that are interested in these committees, so that you have a 5 to 7 member committee and a 5-member committee. But is it your plan that these people could not be on both committees if they wanted to?
No, there is no plan for that currently.
But is it possible down the road somebody could get on both committees, or one is exclusive of the other?
No, they're not exclusive, and we also find that we'll probably holding joint meetings at certain points if we need.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Any other questions? Nope, not seeing any. Mr. Town Manager, do you have anything to say about this?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. I look for a motion on this.
Mike, before the motion,
Okay.
I don't know if this is the proper place to say this or not, but Tiffany, now all of a sudden I'm getting a senior moment, can't remember her last name, Parkhurst, expressed her desire for the committees can organize officially at their first meeting. She would like to serve temporarily as the chairman of the activities committee, to get the people together to form, to get the first meeting together, et cetera, and then they can organize at that first meeting. I don't know how that works.
I believe when you're forming your own committee, you will, on your first thing, nominate for a chair and a vice chair and kind of go from there.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking about is, when to hold the meeting, make sure that the people that will be there are notified and that they will be there and that the meeting is scheduled properly and notification is sent out. She'd like to perform those administrative tasks. Is there any problem with her doing that?
I don't see any.
Mr. Town Manager, do you foresee a problem in that?
No, I don't, sir. And if I could, just, if the board is supportive, this committee in the past, I think, has been a town manager appointed committee, and I just want to make sure that if that's the intent of the board moving forward, and the intent of the committee making a recommendation.
Mr. Romanowski?
It is the committee's. Yes, we would like to have that stay in place.
Mrs. Labrie, I saw you raise your hand. Do you have anything to add?
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Good. At this time, if there's nothing else, I'll look for a motion on this.
Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the restructuring of the Winchendon Community Park Committee into an infrastructure infrastructure committee and community park sub-programming committee.
may I get a second on this, please?
This is Mrs. LeBray, I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Labrie. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Anderson? Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Thank you for the work you do. We're looking forward to see what
Thank
that park
you.
looks like when it's done. Thank you.
Oh, it'll never be done. It's a work in progress.
I'm sure. Yeah. Thank you very much for all the hard
Thank
work you guys put in.
Thank you.
Next up, we have some end of the year transfers, including a late one that was added this afternoon. Mr. Town Manager, would you like to speak to these, please?
I'd be happy to. These second batch of transfers that we're seeking approval for this evening are the final transfers that we need for fiscal 2020. We've outlined about 10 transfers that we're seeking this evening to address a number of different shortcomings and the reasons why those shortcomings came about. I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have on any one of these potential transfers, if you have those.
I'll open it up to the board at this time for any questions. Okay, not seeing any on this. Would someone like to go down the list, please, on these?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Labrie?
I move the Board of Selectmen approve the following transfers and allow the town manager to sign the transfers on behalf of the chair. Transfer from Reserves Police to dispatchers, the sum of $1,050 to cover shortfall due to resignation. From Reserves Police to dispatch overtime, the sum of $700 to cover shortfall due to resignation. From Reserves Police to certification of training and dispatch, the sum of $800 to cover a shortfall due to prior year training grant deficit. Transfer from ambulance certification to houseman, fire department houseman, the sum of $1,397.22 for shift coverage due to firefighter out on medical and 2 unexpected surgeries from on-job injuries. From ambulance EMTs to fire department housemen, the amount of $8,130. Same reason, shift coverage for the firefighter being out. School from in-town, beg your pardon, let me start again. From the school in-town transportation to hardware support, the amount of $852 to cover a shortfall. From school in-town transportation to regional transit, the sum of $85.76 to cover a shortfall. From DPW highway foreman to cemetery foreman, $150 for a shortfall in the original budget due to the leap day. And from DPW Fleet Electric to DPW Streetlight, the sum of $2,600 to cover a shortfall. And finally, from the fire department equipment to the fire department houseman, the amount of $29,000 to cover firefighters' unexpected injuries and absences.
And do you have the last one that was submitted this evening?
Yes, I did read that. That was the last one.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Do we have any questions on this for the town manager as we go forward? Not seeing any. Look for a motion on this, please.
Mr. Chair, I actually read that as a motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
It'll be a roll call vote. Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Ms. Salter?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Labrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Next, we have discussion on setting of town meeting date. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have kind of put this as a placeholder on every board agenda, just to see if the board has changed their opinion on whether or not to wait for a town meeting until we have a better sense of what the revised state cherry sheet figures are going to look like. I know there's been some conversations that I've participated in, questioning why we're waiting and the potential of using free cash that we have available to us to fund some of the school anticipated shortfall based on their anticipation of losing up to 20% of their Chapter 70 money. I'm still of the mind that, having a town meeting today or soon, I wouldn't think would provide the voters a lot of comfort in that the information or the figures that we have from the state at this point aren't worth the paper in my mind they're written on. I anticipate the state coming out with a revised cherry sheet sometime in the early August that will provide us some direction on how to move forward and whatnot. If the board wanted to set a town meeting date of sometime in September, that may be appropriate at this point. I don't know that I want to wait much longer than sometime in September anyways. I believe we'll have state revenues at that, or state cherry sheet figures by then. It's one thing it's just important to remind the board of at this point. There are no real timetables for timing requirements for town meeting. At this point, we've got to allow a week for the final warrant to be posted. We've got to wait, and if the board wants to discuss and potentially reduce the number of registered voters who have to be at town meeting to reduce the quorum, there's about a 2-week waiting period for that, and I believe it's 20 days for the town clerk to have ballots prepared and whatnot. So it's going to create, I think, a condensed schedule is going to put a lot of pressure on the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee to meet as often as they need to deliberate and bring forward a budget that they can support at town meeting. And it may be appropriate at this point to consider a date in sometime in September, but I would think that hopefully by the August 10th Board of Selectmen meeting, there may be some better speculation about where the state is with their budgetary figures. And if the board wants to wait a bit, I could have a timetable set up for a meeting sometime in September after sitting down with the Selectman chair and the Finance Committee chair to make sure that whatever the timetable may be is supportive at least by the chairs of both those boards. So we can bring back a schedule for town meeting at your August 10th selectman meeting, if you'd like to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Any questions from the board on this or any conversation? Not seeing any. Mr. Town Manager, the only I'm sorry, Mr. LeBray, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Keith, if I remember the last time, we're doing a 1/12 budget. I think that the state also is doing a 1/12 budget. How are things going? Have they approved July, August, September, do you know?
The state with regards to the state budget or the town budget?
No, the state.
The state has just approved the July 1/12 budget at this point.
Just the 1 month, okay.
Yeah, they're only approving 1 month at a time for communities as well. So at this point, all they've approved for Winchendon is the month of July.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. LeBray. Mr. Town Manager, the only problem that I foresee with this whole process is that school is scheduled to start in late August, and without a solid budget in place for the school department, they're not going to have a lot of staff. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just putting that on the table as, if we have some sort of figures by August 10th maybe, can we hold town meeting rather rapidly before school opens?
I think the earliest you could probably hold town meeting at that point is either just before or just after Labor Day. I don't know. I apologize. I don't know what day Labor Day is at this point. But if I just use that 20 days that the town clerk needs from August 10th, you're looking at August 30th. So depending on when Labor Day is, we could have it sometime around the first of September. Which obviously may impact the school for a small period of time. But candidly, I think that the challenge they're going to have is they aren't going to be able to rehire teachers, I wouldn't think, until after the approval of town meeting. So it's not a perfect situation by any stretch of the imagination. We are anticipating, weekly costs of over $100,000, I think it's $112,500 on a monthly basis for unemployment for the school department employees who have not been tendered contracts and do not have positions available to them right now. I've made the state senator aware of my concerns about really not being able to get that money back. We have received a written approval from DOR that we can use as much of the COVID grant that's been received by the town of just over $900,000 towards unemployment. And I think that may help, but I don't know that that's really was the primary intent of providing funding for COVID-related costs. I think there is more in line with making sure that if a second wave comes, we have the equipment and have made improvements to the buildings that would allow us to better provide continued service to the public than what we've been able to do under the current situation. So I've got in my town manager's report, we've spent some of that $900,000. There's a significant amount left. That if the board wanted to use that towards unemployment, they could certainly do that. But I know much of the expenses we've incurred to date are technology related to allow the school to do distance learning, to allow some of the employees to work from home using laptops that they may not have had available to them early on in the pandemic, as well as disinfecting machines that we have received, that we've acquired to disinfect vehicles for the police, fire, all town vehicles for that matter, school vehicles, and we have ordered some larger disinfecting machines that primarily school staff could use to walk through the building and disinfect hallways and classrooms, to make sure that the environment the kids are in is as safe as possible. So, there is no perfect situation in my mind. We could approve a budget based on, like a lot of communities are doing, based on a percentage of cherry sheet revenues from fiscal 20. Mass, I think that the DOE is suggesting maybe a 20% cut in Chapter 70. I just find it hard to believe that they are requiring potentially no more than 10 kids in a classroom, yet they're going to reduce Chapter 70 spending by 70%. It just doesn't add up to me. So I wish I had a clear recommendation for the board on when it's best to address in a scheduled town meeting. I think the quickest we could do it at this point is probably sometime in August. But again, I think that might be somewhat speculative in developing a budget to present to town meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Anybody have any questions at this time about that? No? Okay. I look for a motion at this time. A move to delay the FY21 annual town meeting until after receiving the revised FY21 cherry sheet figures. Can I get a motion on that, please?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Town Manager.
Before the board develops a motion, I guess I would just ask that if the board would be supportive of bringing forward a town meeting schedule at your August 10th meeting that could potentially be adopted or at least be considered, that would schedule a town meeting sometime in either late August or early September.
I'll open that up to the board.
Mr. Chair, I am leaning towards, let's get something get a date line set out. Even if we have to push it back or adjust it, I would like to see, a tentative schedule personally.
Anybody else have any feelings on this matter? Mr. Ward, do you have anything on this matter?
I agree with Audrey. I'd like to see just a plan. At our August meeting, we can discuss it or vote on it, but I'd like to see it by that time. Hopefully, by that August meeting, we might have some figures.
Mr. Salter?
Yes, Mr. Barbaro, again, being on the conservative side, I really think that we need to wait a little bit longer. Right now, as everybody knows, the July 15th is the tax deadline when Massachusetts will be collecting the taxes. I'm just really concerned about that, and I just feel like I'm not ready to. I want to see more numbers from the state before we decide anything. I'm really concerned about voting or setting any type of firm budget without it.
Okay. Mrs. Anderson?
And I'm a very conservative person, so.
Mrs. Anderson, do you have anything to speak on this?
I agree with Ms. Salter. I'm very cautious in, without knowing firm numbers, we could get into a whole lot of trouble.
Mrs. LeBrie, I see you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. If I may through the chair, Barbara and Amy, I agree. We shouldn't hold town meeting until we have those figures. Do you see any benefit then in, having a tentative plan that we can always adjust if we don't get the numbers? Or is it just better to, keep the slate clean and then once we get those, start from day one to do the scheduling?
Mr. Chair, I don't have a problem having a tentative plan as long as we can continue to push it if we have to.
Okay.
Do you agree with that, Mr. Salter?
Yeah, I'm okay with tentative, but with the understanding that I'm not gonna, vote to have a meeting until we have the actual, numbers from Mass. But if we wanna like, kind of do a schedule thinking that we would have those numbers, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Do you agree, Mr. Ward?
I agree, but would like to see a tentative schedule, only because I think it's important for the town manager to sit down with finance committee, how much time is needed to get these things published, to get the public hearings, and then we can always keep moving it down the road, but we need to know how much distance in between we need to fill.
Mrs. LeBrie?
But can I add, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Mrs. Salter and Mrs. Anderson for clarifying that for me.
Mr. Salter?
If I may, Mr. Barbaro, my only concern too is I don't want to confuse people. I don't want people thinking we're having a meeting and then we keep pushing it and pushing it. You know, and talking about it gets people ready for it. I don't want any confusion.
Okay. At this point, it sounds like we want to just delay it and get some more information on August 10th. Is that the consensus of the board? And then form a plan from there?
I would be more comfortable with that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I get a motion including that, please?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yes. I move for the town manager to go ahead and come up with a tentative town meeting schedule with all the dates that have to be met to present at the August meeting for our consideration, just for our consideration.
May I get a second on that?
I'll second Mrs. LeBrie.
Great, thank you. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Well, thank you. Mr. Salter?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Thank you. Does that help you out, Mr. Town Manager?
It does. Thank you very much. I appreciate the guidance.
Thank you. We're going to go to old business. Wright Pierce had given us a full and comprehensive water and sewer study, making recommendations on rate increases over the next few years to catch up so we don't slide backwards. We've had 3 weeks to chew on this information. I'll now open it up for questioning on this.
Mr. Chair?
Mrs. LeBrie, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Keith, just, it's a lot of information, and I know we've looked at it a couple of times. The note states that, what's before us this evening includes the annual long-term debt for the Central Street project. Is that project still on schedule, for the state to do that work? Do we know when, that bill is gonna hit?
Right now, they are, I believe, still planning on fiscal 21. I will say there has been some discussion, and I've reached out to the state and have not had a call back or a confirmation that they may push it back a year to fiscal 22. I think it's important for the board, just if you aren't aware, just to remind the board that at the October 2019 town meeting, the voters did approve $250,000 of free cash for both water and sewer to reduce the impact of the debt payments to the water and sewer departments. And that money, again, it would come from free cash. So it's been that money's been obligated, but it has not been expended yet. I think I speak for both Al and I. You know, the is real. I think it's important to replace the existing water and sewer lines under Central Street while that street's being reconstructed. It's going to be it's certainly expensive, but it's the least amount of money it's going to cost while that project is being done to get that work done as well. So as we sit here tonight, I don't have a definitive. It's going to be pushed back. I know the state has talked about that. As I mentioned, I've reached out 2 or 3 times to the contact person, and whether he's either not in the office or on vacation, I'm not sure. But I have not received a definitive answer on that at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this matter?
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. Anderson?
I do. I have a lot of questions on this. Because as the study was presented to us at our last meeting, I had done some research on Veolia, and it took quite a bit of digging into it to come up with what I found wasn't very flattering for the company. And I think we need to take our time. We need to really look at this. We need to remember that study was presented to us. Veolia is the largest wastewater treatment people in the world. They are a for-profit organization. And when they're working with the town of Winchendon and other towns, they are doing this for a profit. And that being said, I do have research with several towns in Massachusetts where there were problems in the millions of dollars. And I want us to be very, very careful before we accept their studies or raise the rates according to their recommendation.
Okay, Mrs. Anderson, do you have any other thing to say or any other information on this?
No, but I would be happy to, if we were to table this discussion, I'd be happy to forward you the information that I have on my research so that we can bring it up after everybody looks at it at a later date.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you. I was going to ask if Ms. Anderson would provide that information, and if the board would be okay with this, I'd like to share it with Veolia as well and ask them to respond to it. So the board has a response to whatever comments have been made by other communities about their performance. And I'd be happy to try to get that information. Al and I have had the opportunity to review the information. I'm not really in too much dispute with what Veolia has presented. Our revenues are decreasing, our costs are increasing slightly. Al's done a great job, in my opinion, of trying to reduce costs where he can. But Al adopted an aging water and sewer system when he became Public Works Director. And as the board knows, we've had to replace dozens and dozens of fire hydrants. We have not done backflow testing like the state's requiring us to do. That's in the budget for fiscal 21. So, we certainly don't take these proposed water and sewer rates lightly. But we want to make sure the board's comfortable with the information you have before you make your decision. So if the board's willing to table this to the August 10th meeting, it would allow staff to do some due diligence. And if the board would like me to ask Veolia to respond to the comments that were made, I'd be happy to ask them to do that as well and attend the meeting on August 10th if you'd like them to. Whatever the board would like to see.
I'll open it up to the board for comments on it at this time.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Ward.
Yes, I would like to hear what Veolia has to say, and I would prefer they be at the next meeting in August.
Mr. Salter.
Yeah, I would like to see what information Mrs. Anderson has and to hear what they have to say. Sure.
Mrs. LeBray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, I agree. I would like to see the information from both sides. But one question about what we have in front of us tonight, Keith, for this, going back to including the cost of the Central Street project, is the increase, how do I want to say this? Well, once we increase those rates to cover the cost of the Central Street project, will those rates ever decrease once that project is done? Or will those amounts remain in there? Does that make sense?
Sure. Let me try to answer it this way and see if it addresses your concern. In the rate study that was presented to you at the last meeting and what's in front of you this evening, takes into consideration over the next few years what debt is being retired and what new debt, meaning the Central Street project, may come online. And those annual costs have been included in the amount of money that needs to be raised to operate the sewer and or water departments with an associated rate. So to make it a short answer for you, yes, I think at some point in the future, when people are studying rates, at some point in the future, certainly the debt payment, the elimination of that debt payment should be taken into consideration when determining what the future rate should be down the line.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I see a consensus of having Veolia attend our August 10th meeting. Mr. Town Manager, please put that on the agenda for August 10th. Barbara, if you will share with the Town Manager and Mr. Town Manager, would you distribute the information that Barbara is giving you this evening about Veolia? So we can review it, and then staff can send out the information to them for them to respond at our August 10 meeting. And if that's the case, I look for a motion to table the rate increase at this time.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward.
I move to table the study until our August meeting.
May I get a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Barbara. This is a roll call vote. Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Town Manager?
Thank you. If anybody has any other questions, either before Barbara sends her information around or after, if you could get those questions to me, I'd be happy to try to provide answers to you for your August 10th board meeting.
Did everyone get that?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Now we got Veola's North American contract. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was gonna ask the chair. Ms. LeBrie asked to have this on the agenda. I think it might be more appropriate to have her address this than me at this point.
Okay. Mrs. LeBrie.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Just kind of goes along with the rate study that was presented to us. There was a lot of information. I know at the discussion at the last meeting on the rate study, there were some questions raised about, when was the contract going to up for renewal and some other contract questions. So I requested that this be on the agenda for discussion if there were anything that board members wished to bring up this evening, or just more for getting the information out there, copy of the contract to the members, etc. So that was my intent on asking this to be on the agenda tonight.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions right now about this particular matter? No? Okay. Because there's no vote needed on this at this time. That's why we're talking about it. Okay. Next up is repairs to Old Murdoch Senior Center. Audrey had asked about this topic to be brought back up. So, go ahead, Audrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, kind of a placeholder, something that, it's the elephant that in the room, just to keep it in front of the board, and it obviously walks lockstep with the budget and town meeting. I did want to put it before the board this evening, in case there was any other comments or anything further that was wanted, that the members did want to do this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions on this or comments about the senior center at this time?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Ward?
Yes, I feel this, we've been pushing this one off. We're going to have to vote on this, whether or not it's going to be in the town warrant. And I feel it's a disservice to the seniors and to the residents of this town to not vote on this now and know whenever the town meeting is going to be held, it be on there. At the last town meeting in 2019, October, the townspeople overwhelmingly transferred $24,000 from free cash to do a study to get that thing repaired. We've got the study. Yes, it's costly, but they spent $24,000 of their money. They deserve to have a vote on this, and whether they approve it or not, the townspeople deserve that. Back in February 2020, the town manager informed the boss and Sheila Betro, director of the senior center, that a warrant article for phases 1 and 2 for the amount of $3,762,000 of repairs would be drafted for the May town meeting. So a lot of these folks had faith in that, they spent $24,000 to get the study. They need to have a vote on this, and I don't think it's the right of the selectmen, 5 members, to hold this away from the town to have their say. Now, they very well may say time's a little bit tough right now, so we're going to vote it down. But it's their vote. They spent the $24,000 to get the study. If we don't let them vote on the study, this thing's going to go up $112,000 to $180,000 every year. We're just wasting more money. So the townspeople really need to have a say on this. Also, this is a historic building. Not repairing that roof is not going to get better. It's not going to improve. It's only going to deteriorate the building. It's a solid building under that roof. And it's a building that's been used for a school. It's the senior center. It's been used. We do our town voting there. This is a very important building we can't let fall apart just because we're in tough times. Finally, if you look at Article 16 of our bylaws, these are our bylaws, it says that we must preserve historically significant buildings, and states that the bylaw was enacted for preserving and protecting significant buildings within the town which constitute or reflect distinctive features of the architectural, cultural, economic, political, or social history of the town, and to limit the detrimental effect of demolition on the character of the town. So in our bylaws, we should be protecting that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Anybody else have anything to say on this before I speak?
I do.
Barbara? Ms. Vance?
Thank you. I feel like at this time, when we're not even setting a date for town meeting, it's a little bit premature to be discussing it, because we don't know what finances are. We don't know where our school situation is going to be, if our schools are going to be able to open up. And quite frankly, the senior center, we don't even know when they're going to be able to be using that building again. So it's really high on my priority list.
Mr. Barbara, if I may?
Yes.
I just want to add to, I think that as a board, it would be irresponsible for us to put this out there to the voters. Just because, again, like Barbara said, we don't know, number one, if they're going to, that I know that building's significant, it's very important, but we might not have the money to fix that building. And quite frankly, I believe that we might end up with more than just that has an empty building by the time we're done financially. There could be other, more buildings, more suitable buildings that the town owns that would be better for the seniors, if they can even meet. I mean, we're at a time now where society and gatherings they're going to change. So I couldn't possibly endorse it or put it out there. I think it's irresponsible.
I saw Mr. Dorwart, Mark, try to ask a question. I'm just trying to respond to him.
I was just saying here to the statement you made that of the position we're in as far as Murdoch goes, that we can't even come up with a town meeting, that we're not in a place to be talking about that yet. I concur. This is to hear. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. I understand, Mr. Ward, where you're coming from on this. I do believe that when time comes to draft a warrant article, I don't think we're going to renege on our responsibilities. I think putting it on a warrant article now when we don't have a really warrant article still open, I just don't see the need to do it. I'm sure it will be on. And my feeling will be up to the voters. I don't think we're going to deny the voters the right to vote on that. I can assure you that's not my intent either. I think at this time, till we can draft a warrant and get some idea about where we're fiscally sound. Again, there's going to be a debt exclusion anyway. It's going to be up to the voters from town meeting to the ballot box. So whether we vote on it now or August 10th, when we have an idea when town meeting comes, is really not going to change.
That's all I'm looking for, is that we vote on that.
Mr. Watt, I have no doubt that that's going to come up and that we will be voting on it.
Okay.
Prior to a close of the warrant and approval moving forward for town meeting. I think that's, well documented amongst us.
Right.
Does that answer everybody's question on this at this time? Okay. Okay, we have August budget amendment. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the board may recall, we brought forward a 1/12 budget for the month of July and the month of August. In June, since that time, department heads have taken a bit of a harder look at their August budget. And there have been some changes that we weren't aware of that we could propose in our initial August presentation. So what Town Accountant Joanne Gogan has done is provided you the original 1/12 budget in the document, and then what we're seeking for a revised 1/12 budget. We're seeking to increase the appropriation authorization to spend money by $159,389. $112,500 of that is what we anticipate for unemployment costs associated with non-renewals of school department employees, leaving a balance of about $46,000. Over half of that is we've got dam inspections of $10,000 that we need to do by state requirement. We have the intergovernmental library book sharing that's due of $8,150, and an upgrade to our ambulance software that is done on an annual basis that was not included in the original funding request for the month of August. So in front of you this evening, we're seeking the board to approve the revised August 2020 appropriation for operations of the town general fund. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has on what you're being asked to consider this evening.
I'll open it up for comments from the board or questions to the town manager. Mrs. LeBray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Keith, could you give me that total number again?
The total increase we're seeking is $159,000.
Beg pardon?
$159,389.
389, just under 160,000, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Has the Finance Committee addressed this issue yet?
The Finance Committee does not play a role in the 1/12 budget. As we talked about in June, this is being seen as an emergency funding request. by the state, so they're using the same rules and regulations that are in place for an emergency appropriation, which means the Finance Committee does not have a role in looking at what's being requested for 1/12 budgets at this point. And just keeping in mind that whatever's approved will have to be absorbed in and included in the annual budget that goes forward to the Finance Committee and to town meeting for a final vote. So this isn't over and above that number. These appropriations will be considered as well in the annual town meeting appropriation request.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other question for the town manager? Not seeing any. I look for a motion at this time.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. LeBrie.
I will move that the Board of Selectmen approve the August 2020 monthly budget amendments as presented this evening.
May I get a second on this?
Second.
Mr. Ward, thank you. This will be a roll call vote. Mrs. Salter?
Aye.
Mrs. Anderson?
Aye.
Mr. Ward?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBrie?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye also. Okay, next up we have the town manager's report.
Mr. Chair?
LeBrie.
If I may, just before we move on from that topic, so Keith, I know that the lion's share of that is the unemployment insurance. Is there any, I know you talked about using some of the COVID-19 relief funds or anything like that. Anything out there, do you think, that would help backfill that amount of money, or is this pretty much what we're gonna have to swallow? Any sense?
At this point, I think to some degree we have to swallow this. There are, unless there's a second round of COVID monies that might become available that would help us with additional funds that could be used if the board and the voters wanted to use some of those funds for unemployment. But at this point, I think we know what we have for COVID money. We can apply some of that COVID money towards unemployment if that way makes the most sense for the use of those funds.
And thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this matter? No? Not seeing any. We're gonna move over to the town manager's report. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, sir. To touch on the CARES money addressing COVID, I provided a summary to the board where we are to date. So there's the $962,000 that we received as a CARES grant from the federal government through the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. There's also FEMA monies that we can apply for and be reimbursed for. We have to spend the money first, and then we seek reimbursement for 75% of the expenses that we incur. One of the requirements of the CARES funds is that you have to apply for FEMA money first. And if FEMA doesn't reimburse for some or all of expenses, then you can utilize CARES funds as long as they're COVID related. So to date, FEMA has three different types of funding opportunities. The first being core services. We have spent to date $97,274. $58,000 of that $97,000 is fire department overtime. We have placed a fire department employee, an extra fire department employee on staff to assist in the cleaning of all apparatus and equipment as they return back from calls for service to make sure that the equipment and the apparatus is as germ-free as possible. We also spent $8,800 to have the senior center cleaned after the town elections. A second FEMA opportunity is expanded health mission. and we've purchased supplies primarily for the town and the school in the amount of $6,586 for to control social distancing. So we've purchased signs, we've purchased stands that guide people where to walk at elections, things of that nature. The third FEMA-related opportunity is services to support residents. We spent just under $22,000, and all of that $22,000 has been to provide school lunch deliveries for families that are in need since the middle of March. And then lastly, we have spent 302 of the $962,000 of the CARES funds. 198,000 of that 302,000 is for school distance learning. They purchased a tremendous number of computers and improved technology to support the backbone to provide distance learning for the kids if in fact they have to distance learn at some point moving forward. $65,000 on library technology to provide remote resources for them. And then the remaining $34,000 is the 25% that the town would have to contribute towards the FEMA costs that I just went through. We can apply that, we can use or charge that 25% the town has to come up with to the CARES funding, which is what we're proposing to do. So we have spent almost a third, not quite a third of the $968,000. Some of the things, when we talk about supplies for social distancing, we have purchased, I believe, 4 handheld units that staff can walk around and disinfect. In this case, fire apparatus, police apparatus each have one. The school department has one. The town office right now is sharing one with the library and the senior center. They've been trained last week when they finally arrived. We ordered those in March. And again, we're just trying to keep our buildings and our equipment as safe as possible. We're also looking to order some larger disinfecting units that would primarily be used to the schools to make sure the classrooms, hallways, and other rooms in the schools are, again, as disinfected as possible and as safe as possible for the users of those facilities to use them safely. So there is a pretty significant amount of money available for unemployment if the board wanted to move forward with that. We have until December of this year to spend that money, so we will certainly have had a town meeting, and we can and there can be votes to determine how to best use the balance of that money. I would guess there's going to be at least $500,000 left towards the unemployment. I just would, I guess, caution the board that you know, if the state revenues don't rebound in fiscal 22, we may not have this one-time revenue to help balance the budget for fiscal 22. So just to urge you to keep that in mind. Any questions at all on the information on the CARES Act and the monies we've received and expended to date?
Mr. Town Manager?
Sure. Yes, sir.
So I noticed we're using FEMA support, services support for residents. Can we include the Meals on Wheel programs to seniors in that?
We are, and we will be looking to get reimbursed for the additional cost incurred for Meals on Wheels over and above what we were already spending to provide that service. So the delta, so to speak, in those costs are eligible to be reimbursed through this CARES fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else on this? No?
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we had no personnel. I also noticed in the town have been notified that maybe it says it will be deferred. I'm saying it may be deferred until the summer 2022. I still haven't received a call back from SDOT. At this point. And then the second phase of the environmental testing at 4 Summer Street, that abandoned property behind the bowling alley, that we're looking to get authorization to sell. That second phase has begun. They will be testing for underground storage tanks, hazards in the buildings, and things of that nature. All that work is being funded through the MRPC. And then we've started to publicize on our Facebook page and on our website. Staff has become aware over the last 2 to 3 weeks of a significant number of wetlands violations, primarily around Lake Menominee. Tree cutting. We've had an individual who has been pushing dirt into the lake to expand their land size. The Conservation Commission heard, and I thought did a very nice job last Thursday evening, listening to, I think it was 6 people who were seeking authorization to cut trees in the wetland area. We are looking to be more aggressive with that, and as I've mentioned to people who have contacted me, we will address these situations as we become aware of them. So if people are seeing violations of the wetlands in and around their neighborhood, if they want to let us know, we'd be happy to investigate any potential violations that we're made aware of and address those violations, if in fact they are violations, with the property owners who created the problem. I was out again today speaking to a couple of residents about some of the violations along Lake Menominee. So it is an issue. If people are aware of it, we would just urge the public to help us out so we can make sure that any violations are investigated and addressed. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Anybody have any questions for the town manager? Not seeing any. I think we might have lost Barbara again. Barbara, are you there? Okay, I think we lost her. Please make note of that in the official record. Okay. Next thing we have is some minutes from Monday, June 22nd, our regular meeting. Look for a motion after you get a chance to read them. You haven't already read them.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Ward,
I move that we accept the minutes as printed for the Monday, June 22nd, 2020 regular meeting.
Second. Audrey LeBrie, second.
thank you, Audrey. Okay, this will be a roll call vote. Audrey,
Aye.
Rick,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. The second set of minutes we have is from the executive session on the 22nd. This is to approve but not to release.
Mr. Chair,
Mrs. LeBrie,
I move to approve and hold the minutes of the executive session from June 22nd, 2020.
can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Roll call vote. Mr. Saucer,
Aye.
Mr. Ward,
Aye.
Mrs. LeBrie,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, we have Board of Selectmen summer schedule meeting continues, with the next meeting being held on August 10th, 2020, and August 31st, unless there was some information from the state that we might be able to meet earlier. But that is our tentative schedule moving forward. Now, up next, we have a executive session for number 6. To consider the purchase, exchange, and lease of value of real estate. If the chair so declares, I do. Mellon Road. And I move to enter into executive session under exemption number 6 to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, and or value of the real estate, if the chair so declares, which I have, the subject being Mellon Road, and not to reconvene into public session. Can I get a motion as I presented that?
So moved.
And again, this is roll call vote, and then we're gonna go on executive session and exit out of that.
Mr. Do you have a second?
Yes, I do. Go right ahead.
Oh, no, do you have a second for the motion?
Right, you have a second for the motion.
Second.
Mr. Ward. Mr. Salter. Mr. Ward.
Aye.
Mrs. Labrie.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. We'll go into executive session and recess.
I have a question.
Mr. What?
Yeah, I'd like to challenge the body to demonstrate a reasonable basis for this being a closed meeting.
Mr. Town Manager.
Make sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I did prior to the executive session that occurred at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, I spoke to our legal counsel about the appropriateness of purpose number 6. He again concurred that number 6 is appropriate because the discussion we'll be having this evening will concern the value of real property. And our legal counsel feels as though it's certainly legitimate and appropriate.
Can you demonstrate that here at this meeting, at this time?
Sorry?
Can you demonstrate that here at this meeting at this time?
I don't need to.
Yeah, you do.
No,
You
I
must
don't.
be
I
able
think
to
that's
demonstrate a reasonable basis for the claim of purpose 6 that must be to consider purchase, sale, or lease of real value of real property. The chair must declare that discussion during the open session would have a detrimental effect on negotiating position, and you must be able to demonstrate a reasonable basis for that.
I think he's done that.
Can you please do that? No, can you do that here at this meeting, not the last
I
meeting,
think
this
that I-
meeting?
I think,
I could.
Mr. Town Manager, I think we've done that. We're going into executive session.
Just saying that you're going to a executive session because you need to is not demonstrating anything.
We're going to an executive session to discuss Mellon Road as far as what needs to be done going forward from legal.
Are you considering purchase, sale, lease, or value of Mellon Road itself?
We are considering the claim that residents of Mellon Road have alleged the town to incur based on the alleged failure to maintain the roadway. And this,
But that doesn't fall under.
Mr.
With all
Dollar.
due respect, that does not follow purpose 6.
Mr. Dollar, please.
Dorwart, thank you.
Dorwart, thank you. Please. Can't
So
come
that
up
the-
with a reason to go into
so in
executive
my
Under
opinion-
open meeting law, it's very clear that this meeting must be to consider purchase, sale, lease, or value of the real property that you mentioned as Mellon Road. It's in open meeting laws. Like, it's very clear. The state reiterates this a number of times in many different ways. If you're going to go into an executive meeting claiming purpose 6, it must be to consider purchase, lease, or value of real property. Otherwise, it needs to be a publicly open meeting. And if you're not going to do that in this meeting, which you just said that you're not doing that, you just said that you're discussing what we brought to your attention. What we brought to your attention had nothing to do with considering the purchase, sale, lease, or value of real property. Therefore, this should not be an executive meeting.
No, we respectfully disagree.
You have not demonstrated a reasonable basis.
Okay.
You're not complying with the law that's sitting right in front of me. Yes.
Mrs. Labrie.
I'm sorry, thank you, I had to unmute. I would say that the value of the real estate is under discussion.
He already said what the meeting is about. It's about the letter that our lawyers sent to you. He's already said that the meeting is not about the purpose number 6.
That's not true.
It's
sir.
already been stated.
That's not true.
at all, sir. Could I,
You
Mr.
just
Chair,
said that.
Mr.
We have
Chair, can I
witnesses.
restate
It's
what
on
I said
tape.
originally, please?
So you're changing the purpose from what's on the
No, sir.
agenda?
No, sir.
Because the purpose on the agenda says to consider purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate of Mellon Road, exemption number 6, which is to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on negotiating position of the body. What are you negotiating as far as considering purchase, sale, lease, or value of real
The
property?
value of the
That it needs to be
value
behind
of
closed
Mellon
doors.
Road, sir. The value of Mellon Road.
What does that have to
We're
do
discussing.
with, but the town manager just told me that the meeting was with the letter that we sent you.
No, the
So
meeting.
now are you changing your mind?
The meeting is to
You can't pick and
discuss.
choose what you're saying.
Excuse me, sir. The meeting.
It's on tape what you said.
I can
Not
say
what I
it
said,
if I
sir.
want. The meeting is to discuss the value of Mellon Road. That's what
Why?
we're going to executive session for.
Why?
I don't have to disclose that to you right now, sir.
You do have to demonstrate a reasonable basis. for
I
this
just
claim.
told you what the reason is.
The reasonable basis you told me, at
We're
first
going in to look at the value of
was
Mellon
that it
Road.
was to discuss the letter that sent to you. I can look at the finding
Did he really?
the discussion, which was a clear intent that executive purpose number 6 was just a ruse. This is on tape, may I remind you.
That's fine, sir. We're going in to discuss the value.
So you're admitting that it was a ruse, the original reason that you
No, it
stated
wasn't.
5 minutes ago.
It was just misstated.
It was misstated on the paper here,
No.
the agenda of the meeting. What he just said, what you and he just said, what Hickey and Barbaro just said was misstated, and you changed your mind once I held you to the law. Once I pointed
No,
out
sir.
what the open meeting law was, you changed your position. It's on tape. We saw it happen in real time.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Town.
I move that this be a public meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you. Mr. Dowert, as I mentioned to you, we are discussing the value
Thank
and
you.
potential liability that we have on Mellon Road based on the assertions that have been made in the letter sent to the town of Winston by attorneys who are representing some number of residents along Mellon Road. We have checked with legal counsel. Legal counsel says, it indicated to me, that the Board of Selectmen have the ability to go into executive session under purpose number 6, which is to discuss this particular issue. You are
So
certainly
why are you valuing it?
Finish,
Whose
sir.
value are you
Finish, sir.
valuing it?
Can I
Who
finish?
owns it?
You certainly have the right to your opinion, and I respect that, but we have legal counsel's decision, and I would just ask the board that they consider that before they decide. There's a motion on the floor, and they can decide whether or not they support
You should
the
also
opinion of legal
take
counsel.
into consideration the Attorney General's position on open law meetings.
And you can certainly challenge that,
Open
Mr.
meeting law.
Dowd.
Mrs.
So
Anderson.
who owns Mellon Road that you're valuing it? Because I think that would pertain to this justification for a private meeting that you're valuing it. Who owns Mellon Road? Mr. Barbaro, who owns Mellon Road? Mr. Barbaro, who owns Mellon Road?
Sir, please be quiet. I'm addressing Mrs. Anderson at this time. Thank you. Mrs. Anderson, there's a motion on the floor to go into executive session for reason number 6.
Has it been seconded?
Yes, it has.
Okay. Aye.
Okay, then we're going into executive session.
Attorney General takes
We'll
about this.
convene-
Laws
Exit
are
after
clear.
that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Shea. I'm on 275 Mellon Road. I just want to let you know that I think that this is a little bit of a railroad job. I think Mark has already laid out the requirements of this. It's laid out in the mass laws for meetings, town meetings, and I don't believe you're complying with it.
Well,
Okay,
sir,
so I think this is a railroad job a bit.
Sir, I think we agree to disagree at this time, and we're going into
I'm
executive.
gonna have to third that. As a Winchendon resident, going to a closed meeting would be a little absurd.
Again, that's your opinion, sir. We're going into executive session. Thank you.
Are you going to
do
announce
you
whether
have
the
to
open
hide?
session will reconvene after? You must do that.
We're not convening. We're exiting after that.
Okay.
Thank you.
What do you have to hide? What are you scared of?
I'm not scared of anything, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending.
It's a bit of a sham, gentlemen and ladies, a bit of a sham. It's disappointing that our local government is doing this.
It is.
Okay, we're gonna.
There's no reason this should be discussed clearly under closed doors. Your first response, you changed. Both you and Hickey changed your response. When I asked you the first question, it was in response to a letter the lawyers wrote from a group of people on the road. Then you changed your reasoning to it's about valuing because I said or read it to you. You changed your minds in the middle of the answering the question. The public knows that you guys are full of it.
Okay.
Do you
You're
really
being watched.
want to
You're being
move
watched
on?
by a
Do you
lot of
really want the
people.
public to know that this is what you're doing?
Yeah,
let's go into executive session.
thank you. We're
Now,
Are you guys really proud of yourselves?